I think negotiation is both a science and an art.
Price communicates and signals your value perception of your service or your product. If you price yourself too low, you're underselling yourself in a way. What is the number at which if you are paid less than that, then you will start getting resentful for the work that you're doing?
If you're not negotiating, your leadership might not trust you to handle difficult conversations or difficult projects.
I run an independent AI advisory agency for enterprises. We were just so excited to try to get the contract. I'm also a senior advisor at Harvard's Applied AI Institute called the Digital Data Design Institute. This is the way that people in Japan negotiate. Nemawashi is a very well-known concept where if you're going to negotiate something, you don't do it at the meeting. You do it before the meeting.
Hello. Welcome
Hello.
to
Gentle power.
Gentle Power. We need to work on that intro.
Yes.
I feel like we've only been doing this for almost a year, but one of these days it will be flawless.
As long as we don't say it at the same time, I cannot handle that.
You can't I used to sing a cappella, so I'm very used to
Yes.
saying things in sync with people. Yeah.
Yeah, at the Air Force Academy, Alex was in
Yes.
the a cappella group.
Yes.
He would be invited to the dean's house.
Yeah, we do a lot of performances for VIPs and generals and
Yeah.
distinguished guests. I will say we will get into the interview very shortly here, but I will say I was the leader of the a cappella group
Okay, I
my
didn't know
junior and senior. Did it not tell you?
Did I
this?
not know
Oh wow!
this?
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah, we've only been married for
Only
10 years. But after I graduated, the a cappella group completely blew up in a good way, where they made it to I think fourth place in America's Got Talent TV
Yeah.
show, and then they also.
For you to leave to blow up.
I like to think that I set them up for
Right.
success. You know, these things take time. And they also are now invited to the White House Christmas party every year to perform there
wow.
for the president and all the,
That's
like
so
top
cool.
government officials. So, but we are not here to talk about my
Super cool. Can we
acapella-
talk more about that?
well, we are here to talk to you. Our guest today is Kenko Ueyama. And we met Kenko through this community that we work out of for our business, a co-working space, but also a community of founders, people working on their own business, just a really great place in San Francisco.
Which is called Shack 15.
Shack 15.
I believe the founder is Norwegian, and the atmosphere and the vibe and the interior decor is so
It's beautiful.
beautiful and vibey.
One of the most beautiful spaces in San Francisco,
I
my
agree.
opinion. So
yeah.
anyone wants to check out Shack 15, we're happy to send you the link. And anyway, but we're also not here to talk about Shack 15. We are here to talk to Kenko, our guest. But we met at Shack 15, and we've just gotten to know each other. We would run into each other all the time and talk about work and things like that. And Kenko, you are also running a bootstrapped business. And well, you know what? Why don't I just let you introduce yourself, and would love to hear a bit about your background, what you do, and you also mentioned how you encounter negotiations very often in your work. So let's start getting into that. But Kenko.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a really pleasure. So I run an independent AI advisory agency for enterprises. So helping enterprise executives figure out their AI strategy from ROI thinking to identifying use cases to actually building the actual AI systems for the clients. I'm also a senior advisor at Harvard's Applied AI Institute called the Digital Data Design Institute. And as an advisor slash lecture facilitator, I create the materials and also run workshops for enterprise clients on more of a leadership training of how to think about AI. So kind of a one-stop shop for the enterprise clients on anything from thinking about how to use AI and development.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. So that's what you're doing now.
Mhm.
The question is, how do you get to something like this so we can set the context?
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. Yeah. So before this, I was in working at Mitsubishi Corporation. It's the largest and leading conglomerate in Japan. So that was a whole different past life. It was much more dynamic of a work, working with Singaporean Temasek subsidiaries to create new private equity funds, investing maybe a couple $1 billion into different fund portfolios. So a lot more on the investing side and running large scale projects. But then after that, went to Harvard Business School for my MBA, and ChatGPT came out, and I was always investing in AI, but the release of a new consumer product just completely changed the trajectory of my life. And since then, I've been spending every single day talking to AI more than people almost at this point. And so,
I
yeah,
can
from
relate.
then. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now more and more people are relating. So started the company with another co-founder who is also an HBS classmate. And since then, we've just been going at it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's very cool. And do you need to have a technical background to do what you do? Slash, do you have a technical background?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm semi-technical, so back then before HBS, I was not really programming or anything like that. And then I just became self-taught. So started creating, AI systems like voice AI agents for customer service, or just being hands-on, because this has maybe if you've also been, in San Francisco bubble following what's going on, it's for software engineers too, the whole workflow is completely changing and the way people program is completely changing. So I just rode that wave, and now everybody's using, Claude Code and other AI systems to code. And for me, I use it for everything from just creating PowerPoints to email drafting to everything I use on Claude Code. So now I've become quite technical as well.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you are self-taught in technical ways through AI. So through the models. That's super cool. Alex and I have been trying to join some vibe coding tutorials, but haven't been able to carve out the time. Very
Oh
cool.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of there's a ton of hackathons going on. I joined my first hackathon in SF a few months ago, and since then been going. But it's a lot of fun, and yeah, we should have another session on how to use AI tools. I
Yeah.
also attended one by MIT on negotiation hackathon. So that was creating an AI
Really?
system that negotiates on your behalf, and negotiation is such a complex, topic that MIT decided to make that as a, like a research topic for the hackathon. So that was really fun as well.
Well, that's very timely because MIT just flew me in a few weeks ago to give a negotiation masterclass to 200 grad students there. I'm
Oh,
an
wow.
alum myself,
Uh,
and it sounds like AI has not figured that out since they had to fly me in.
They needed a human to give the class.
Yes, yes. I
That's
think
super
I think
cool.
I think negotiation is one of those things where it's both a science and an art, and at least for now, I don't think AI can quite replace us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, yeah, when I was HBS, there was a class where they brought in Pactum AI. It was a negotiation AI system, and they, negotiate for example, like a Walmart. And because it's more like working with vendors and it's like rapid negotiations over and over again, that's like really useful for AI. But I'm sure we'll get into it. But for more complex enterprises, it's a lot more of like human relationships and
Yeah.
art, I think.
Absolutely. Communication, human relationship, being authentic, and striking that balance between authenticity but also strategy. And another fun fact is that many of our clients are actually AI engineers applying to OpenAI, Anthropic, and all that. So we have full conviction that for now and not anytime soon, AI will not replace us.
Maybe we'll have an AI as one of our co-hosts.
Nice. Copilot.
Yeah.
Cool. So we wanted to turn it over to you to see when and how do negotiations come up for you in your work.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's like a constant negotiation, especially, so I provide like custom AI solutions for enterprises. So whenever we have a project going on, we need to create a contract, and that's been a lot of the major negotiations is doing contract with my clients. And my clients tend to be recently more like consulting companies that have a lot of AI projects coming in, so helping them figure out how to consult for those clients, or financial like private equity or venture capital firms that have have portfolio companies that need AI implementation. And yeah, so those contracts are a lot of negotiations because we're also dealing with something that's new. So how do you structure AI contracts that's a little bit different from previous software products? So how does that look like? And also, just because it's very different from Mitsubishi's large scale contracts, just trying to figure out how to do it as a more small size business that doesn't have a lot of leverage or credibility. So how do you go from a lower positioning to leverage yourself and get the contracts? I think one thing I've learned from starting out, and I still got a lot to learn, but I think it might be helpful to share my experiences. And I was thinking about this recently. We did in the beginning for negotiations go through the strategy of discounting ourselves a little bit, so pricing ourselves a little bit lower than the market rate, just so that we can try to get the clients. And especially when the first large, like $1 billion plus revenue company, we were just so excited to try to get the contract that we didn't price ourselves. And that was a learning to not do that because it's when you do that, I think for ourselves, we're excited by it, but when things are hard, we start worrying also about how the company finances are looking, and also just the amount of resources as personnel or capital that we're putting into the project. And when times are hard, we start realizing, oh, why are we doing this for such a low price? Which is okay, but then what we also realize is that it's also a loss for the client side, because the client also doesn't allocate a lot of attention or personnel to contracts that are not a big price. And so it becomes lower on their priority list as well. And then that just kind of slows down the entire project pace and also the excitement towards it. So yeah, one thing I learned is always be confident and okay to price yourself the right market value. And if people say no, then that's okay. Maybe it's a way for finding other avenues of collaboration, but yeah, definitely good to price yourself right.
Yeah, this is such an interesting concept, and you reminded me of something I learned when I was at business school at Wharton in my branding class, how your price communicates and signals the value perception of your service or your product. So the founders of Warby Parker, they started the company when they were MBA students at Wharton, and they were getting advice from one of their professors who ultimately became one of their advisors on their board. And
Is it Adam Grant?
it may have been Adam Grant or maybe some other professor, but that professor, after hearing their pitch, said, "All of this looks great, but you have priced yourself too low. Your glasses are $45. People will think that they're cheap. Double the price." And so they doubled it and started selling their glass at $90. And after they priced it at $90, their sales went way higher, and people started perceiving them as a premium brand.
Yeah.
And so I really like how you have encountered this in your work, where if you price yourself too low, you're underselling yourself in a way, as well as other
In
people.
several ways.
In
So
multiple ways.
Not only the actual price, but also you're getting less attention, and the perception of your work is also diminished. That's so interesting. I'm curious, how did you land at the price that you already landed at? What kind of preparation did you do? Also, I realized I never introduced another participant on this call. This is Truffle.
Pafo?
This is Truffle. She's camera shy. Yeah, I'm curious. Actually, I'm curious about two things. One is, how did you prepare? How did you land at the number you landed at? Because we get this question a lot in our negotiations. People come in and they're like, you must have so much data and things like that. Or like, this is all the market data I found. And then the other thing is, do you think that you undersold yourself? You're like, that price was too low, because now you already got the contract. And so you're looking back at it saying that, well, it was too low, but at the time you didn't know if you were going to get it. So I'm curious if maybe it was the right move at the time. So curious how you think about both of those things.
Yeah, great questions. I think in terms of the pricing amount, I think it's just experience and doing it over and over again. After doing a lot of contracts and proposing for the past 1 or 2 years, I've started to just get a sense of, oh, this is the right amount for this project. And it's really kind of an art. And also just talking to a bunch of people and understanding how they price it. But as you kind of mentioned in the second question, the environment keeps changing. And especially with AI, like the technology and the pricing is always changing. A month before is a completely different thing from the next month. So I think, yes, looking back, it was cheaper. It felt cheap, and at the time, it didn't feel like it. But I think it was also the market and the environment changed. And as we learned how much companies are willing to pay more and more for AI services, we realized, oh, we should have been more comfortable charging a higher price. So definitely there was that feeling of, yeah, that we wanted to. But also another part is, yes, like the environment is still changing so much, and now I'm hearing that other, business owners who are doing similar things as me, their AI pricing and service prices are going down. They're being pushed down because coding is becoming so much easier, and that everybody is providing the same service faster and faster. That we are getting a little bit more squeezed down. So now we're seeing the market prices go down as well. So kind of changes. I think just one more point about that is another thing I learned is to set expiration dates on the proposals, because there have been contracts where we set a price and they didn't come back to us for 3 months and we almost forgot about it, and then came back to us with the same proposal saying that's okay and they want to do it. But then 3 months later, the environment is completely different, and we look back at the old contract and it almost feels like we wrote it very like a long time ago. It's just the terms that we made and the price. We're like, why did we make that? And so yeah, setting an expiration date and making sure the contract is right for that specific timing is also another thing.
I love that. And just to make sure, I want to pause in how did you pick your price? So, can we be very specific? You said you have experience with AI projects, like, and then maybe you asked around. Can we be very specific how you landed on a price? Did you go back to your previous contract you had worked with, maybe at your previous jobs, and you're like, oh, for this one, they paid this much, and then you took an average or intuition, and we probably can charge this. I'm very curious about this very specific process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it kept going back to the labor hours that's required, especially for software. It's mostly human capital that's being our cost and not much like other assets. And so we would price how many hours or per hour basis how much our labors cost. And then per month or however long the project is, how many labor hours are required for that project, and then just multiply by the number of hourly rate that we would need. Kind of similar to like consulting where, or lawyers, law firms where you charge by the hour and have like, partners are charging this much, or, associates charge this much. We just kind of convert that for ourselves. And yeah, but then also depends, right? If it's like a retainer, we love to do more monthly retainer fees just so we can predict what our future revenue is going to be. And so if we can, secure more of a retainer fee, we would give a little bit of a percentage discount, or at the same time, we'd also ask for like a minimum number of hours that we charge per month or something, so that we can kind of have a predictable amount of income.
Actually, we have a lot of people consider and think about retainers. Do you mind talking a bit about that? And you can make up some numbers, but what does a retainer look like in your experience? So, the way I understand retainers is, let's say a company wants us as negotiation consultants, then we ask them to commit, I'm going to make these numbers up, $10,000 a month for at least 10 hours, and then if they want more, we have an hourly fee. If they don't use those 10 hours a month, then they have to pay us the $10,000 anyway. So it's on them to use it. And then if they use it and they want to spend more time with us, then they pay our hourly fee on top of that. Is that kind of how you structure it, or if not, how?
Yeah, that's exactly how we structure it as well. And yeah, I work mainly with the US and Japan market, so they have a different fee.
Okay, and then again, our audience will not be super clear on where do you find these numbers? Is this just kind of common practice, or did you go back to your previous jobs like, I charge this much per hour? Like, where exactly did you find the numbers?
I think it's just really kind of a sense, personal sense. I think it's more of an art. Previous job at Mitsubishi, it's the pricing is way higher and way different. So to be more of a small business, yeah, it's really, and of course I use AI to understand market rates all the time. So that's another way.
Okay. Do you trust AI with market rates?
Yes, well, yes, because it finds every single link online and tells me which link and which where the information came from. So I just synthesize all of those information. So yeah, but I mean, also it's really hard to find market rates because the software service is such a
Yeah.
broad, and I try to work more with executives and directly with the decision makers to be more of their strategic thought partners. So that and charge more for that. But if you're more of a software vendor and you already have a pain point that the client wants and like already have something to build, then you would be charging way less. So if we outsource to overseas and hire engineers from overseas, you can, they might charge anywhere from like $20 per hour. Whereas like any like in the US or Japan market, these strategic partners charge anywhere from like 100 to like 300. And then people go up to like 800, 1,000 per hour as well. So really kind of depends on how you see, how senior you see yourself and how much the client values you as well.
I think what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you are looking at various data and sources, your own experience and AI, and maybe friends and co-founder and talking to executives. And I'm sure there's negotiations in there. So there's a lot of data points. The reason why I was pressing on this point is because with our clients, we tell them to be very careful with market data. We do negotiations for job offers and business deals. For job offers, I used to work at salary.com where we had employer reported data, and companies pay a lot of money to have access to employer reported, statistically significant, cleaned up salary data. And what people are finding online is not only not static, not accurate, could be random people posting it. Again, this is in the job offer context, but it's also dangerous to go to a company. We've had people who were considering working with us and talked us through their process and what had happened. They're like, I found this number, I went to the company, I should be paid this much. And they're like, not even our executives are making that much. I don't know where you found that number. We're a seed stage startup. So on our end, in the job offer context, it's actually not only inaccurate, but it can be dangerous in how you present it. Go into the company with the market data you found, not only because they might find you entitled, which is the more extreme case, but as simple as they might think you will not be happy there. If you want to make, let's say, $500,000, but they're only paying 200, 300, they're like, you're just not going to be happy here. We want retention. We don't want someone who will come here and be resentful.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it'll be more like consulting people like you guys is definitely super helpful. And then not really, I guess, talking to a lot of people, would that be the best way, or synthesizing different ideas? That's it.
I really like your approach that you gather a lot of data from different sources. So it's data points that you have in the back pocket. In the job offer context, talking to other people, looking at the online data and the company's public range, those are good data points to have, but not great and also risky. Also, because I have people who come in, I know my coworker makes this much. Why didn't they give me that much? Market dynamics are constantly changing. So that other person, maybe they were hired a couple years ago where the market was much better, or they had another offer, or the team was under more pressure to hire someone, and 20 other reasons why they got paid better. So in the job offer context, that's very delicate. In a business deal, things are a little bit more fluid, less time constrained. I think the art part is even more prominent than the science part, because in the job offer context, there's a lot of laws that dictate, how you pay people, and then you have to think about retention and protected class and all that. So it's a little bit different. But in a business deal, I think the art part comes in more, and you also want to think about your priorities. So for you, it sounds like your priority at the very beginning was, we need to get a good client and we're willing to charge half of what we're supposed to charge. I sense looking back your doubt about that, but I can also see at the time it was probably the best move because you wanted to land the client.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, those it really gives me a lot of ideas on how I was approaching it. And I guess another way is, I mentioned it first was how we price, like how much we cost and how much do we need to charge to feel great about the project and excited about it. And that depends on how important the priorities of the project is. But then we also definitely think about the client side and what's their budget and what's their willingness to pay. So kind of like the BATNA concept. Yes, exactly. So definitely we go through that. And, if the project really hits their revenue line, then they're willing to pay more because it's just additional revenue for them. Whereas if it's cost cutting or like ROI thinking, not as much. So we also take that into account.
Kenko, you mentioned something about how to price yourself in a way where if times get really tough, then you're not really doubting yourself or thinking like, why am I spending time on this? There's this concept that I had heard about how you should think about pricing. So of course, what the budget of your client is and maybe market data, but there's also something for oneself personally, which is the resentment number.
I was actually going to ask you to talk about that.
Yeah, so the resentment number is.
Did you learn about this?
I heard it on another business podcast. I think it was from the Korean Mom Business podcast.
If you're listening to Korean
Yeah, that's something I'm very familiar with. And she had built a multi-seven-figure consulting business, but she talked about when you're pricing yourself, for yourself personally, what is the number at which if you are paid less than that, then you will start getting resentful for the work that you're doing. Like maybe you're spending too much time on it, or like you said, if times are getting really tough, why did we agree to this? We're spending so much resources on this thing. So for every business owner out there to also think about what is your resentment number? What's the lowest you're willing to get paid? And if any lower than that, you will start feeling contempt or resentment for doing that work. I think this is something that you clearly encountered when you were building your business too.
Yeah, you just gave me the term for what I've been thinking about. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Kenko, I'm curious, when you were negotiating with potential clients on finding an agreement on the services you would provide, were there ever any cases or any standout situations where the negotiations were especially tough? Maybe when a client really pushed back and said, this doesn't work for us, or they wanted a lot more than what you were offering. Have there been any cases like that? And how did you land the plane?
Did you intend it?
I realized that
After
the
you
pun,
said
yeah.
Unintended.
Yes.
Unintended. That's a great question. I think they've actually been pretty okay, honestly. I think Mitsubishi was a lot more difficult and we'd have an army of lawyers doing the contracts for these like large scale joint venture investments and things like that. So that was a lot more complicated, but I think not too much. Yeah, most of them have been pretty amicable and the contracts went pretty smoothly.
Reframe it into what do you find the hardest part in the negotiation?
Yeah, I think one hard thing is I've always learned that another thing I've learned is to put everything on the table when you're negotiating. So having all of the terms that you want to, so that you don't like later on add another term or change some of the scope or something. So making sure that everything is laid out on the table, so you have both sides know exactly which terms are out for negotiation, and that's kind of the hard part. Is like you tend to forget or not realize this, like a payment scheme or like one of the project scope should be included in the contract at the time, because you're just trying to do it quickly and there's a lot of different variables involved. So it's hard to make sure everything is on the table at once, but also AI has kind of helped with that. For example, one difficult client I had was the client is this is super successful company, growing super quickly, but their payment is very late every single time. And that's fine because contracts are not always about the contract itself, and it's also about relationships, and I enjoy working with them, so that was fine. The way AI helped was when I was going through the contract, I didn't realize at first that there was a late payment term that was egregious to me. And the AI picked it up, and noticing that I should be implementing more specific late payment structures. And so The very specific example is one thing I added was, pro rata interest rate for however many days that's being late for payment. And I have the right to charge that if the payment is late. And because it's more of a relationship, I've never charged for that late payment term. But adding that just gave me a lot more peace of comfort that if anything happens and I really do need to charge, I have that on the contract. So otherwise, I would have kind of felt bad working with them, thinking, oh, like if something happens, would I be able to trust them? But because it's already on the contract, I'm like, okay, it's fine. They're paying me late, but I don't mind it at the moment. So yeah, just that was what way that AI helped me, that like it's a very specific detailed term that I might have missed out, but because the AI just kind of like looked through the entire thing, was able to pick those little items up as well.
Did you ever talk about that payment term with the client? Because one thing that I have found with other business owners is they are afraid to even put that in because they want to avoid the conversation of the other side saying, hey, why do you have this late payment term? Don't you trust me? And they want to avoid this whole thing. But I think what you did is super smart because you just put into writing protections against yourself in the event that these things happen. So I'm curious if you actually had a conversation with that client about this.
We just had it in the comments of the contract, and we had a bunch of other comments as well. But it completely feel about, you don't want to kind of offend the counterpart when you're doing negotiations, and it's going to be a working relationship. So you want to keep it longer term. But for me, the way I see it is, contracts are also kind of a soft project that you're collaborating on with the client. It's like a way of seeing how the other person works. So how conservative or open is the legal team? How much are they willing to budge? And so at times you also have to stand up for yourself, because it shows like what kind of a business person you are and what kind of values you have as well. So I kind of see it as a way of like just testing the waters out. In a way, it's like prenups, for example, is completely different, but you don't really need to sign a prenup. But if you just do the discussion about a prenup with your spouse, then it opens up discussions for a lot of different ideas. So it's a way of just like understanding what your values are and understanding how you like to think about things. Even if you actually don't do the prenup or sign it or anything, it's a way of just understanding how each other thinks.
That's such an excellent point, because we sometimes have people come to us and say, I'm hesitating to negotiate. And we're like, you should absolutely negotiate, because this is a representation of what type of employee you will be. And if you're not negotiating, your leadership might not trust you to handle difficult conversations or difficult projects. So I actually, when I had a very tough manager and a very tough job years ago, I didn't know I was walking into a very tough job, but I negotiated everything. So I was negotiating the job offer. And then later on, a few months later, my manager gives me some of the most exciting projects, because they said, hey, I saw how you negotiate the job offer, and I trust you to handle these exciting but tough projects. So we say you always want to negotiate the way you handle negotiations, which is with a lot of diplomacy, professionalism, kindness, and all that. It shows how you will handle difficult conversations and projects in the actual work engagement. I love that you touched on that point.
Kenko, this is slightly bit of a pivot, but your background reminded me of this. So recently, we have been getting potential clients or people interested in working with us who are applying to companies in Asia, in Japan, in Singapore. And one question that they have for us is, what are specific negotiation things that are unique to these cultures or these types of companies that may not necessarily apply in the US?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. At least Japan and some parts of Asia, maybe Korea more similar, maybe less so Singapore and China, is like just much less negotiations happen in the first place. So especially in Japan, a lot of employees, especially for job negotiations, people don't really negotiate their offered salaries or anything. So most people who come to the US are so surprised that we get suggestions to negotiate the prices in the first place. So that's a big difference, is just not much of a culture to kind of fight for the job offers.
So
But
that
that's
would
also
be Japan and Korea. You said they don't negotiate?
Yeah, I just my personal experience. More like Singapore, I lived in Singapore for a few years. They tend to be much more kind of Western thinking a little bit. But Japan definitely, you take the offer that you get is a very conventional thing, and because of that, also the employers also sometimes get surprised when employees push back as well. So it doesn't mean you cannot do it or anything like that, but it's just a very different mindset there.
Yeah, let's say if you were to do it, how would you do it?
We're like, I thought you were gonna ask what would happen. It's like you're fired.
But well, that also makes a lot of sense. Japanese culture, Korean culture is very much about conformity and
So I've learned that.
yeah, the Albanian culture is the extreme opposite. You fight for every single thing.
Yeah, I used to have a
Trying to get a
Lebanese
better
roommate as
deal.
well. Yeah, my roommate was from Lebanon, and we just had very different ways of thinking about these things, which is super fun.
But yeah, you said there are sometimes cases where an employee would push back and the company gets surprised. Do you have any tips or things that you've seen that have worked in those corporate cultures in Asia?
Mm, I think it really depends on your career tenure as well. If you're starting out, it's more difficult, and you just kind of get what you're offered, or you just choose another offer. But then, yeah, once we get to, I think, close like more our tenure, it's more about who you're going to be working with and the relationship you have with the CEO or executives. So just knowing the right people and who's going to hire you and how much they want you, and if they really want you, just understanding what your value is and asking for that might be a big thing. Yeah.
I see. So of course there's a big aspect of nurturing relationships.
Right.
It's the art and not a science aspect where you want to make sure you're building the right connections and investing in those in that.
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke when you said, "How do you handle negotiations in cultures where they don't negotiate?" You look so excited. I was gonna say, "Do you up your American accent?" I'm American and we negotiate everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Howdy, y'all.
Yeah, clearly all Americans say howdy, right?
It's the first time I've ever said it.
Yeah, actually, I've never heard you say that before. Let's see.
That's a great way.
Yeah,
But
that's
also
super.
maybe they might be more open to other parts of negotiation, just not like the price of the
Yeah.
actual salary, but more like remote/hybrid or other
Yeah.
aspects could be more open. Yeah.
Actually, one point we can extract from that joke is that it's actually good, at least in negotiations that we've seen, especially in job offers, to present a little gently, softly, and a little bit naive is okay. People, when they think of negotiations, they think they need to be buttoned up and show up like a lawyer and all that. I think that actually brings out a defensive side from the other party. I imagine if you go to Japan. And I'm like dying to negotiate in Japan. But I imagine if you go and you're like, I'm just curious, is it possible at all to sort of discuss the price? I can't imagine them being like, no, this deal is over. It's like, oh, this person is just, sort of new to
Yeah.
this and they're just trying to explore together. I don't think it would be an immediate ending the relationship.
Yeah, and who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they might be surprised, and you may be surprised that they do come up on certain things.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
see
just
this.
by simply
I
asking.
Yeah, I see this all the time. I negotiate, as Alex knows, everything, concert tickets, seats, and plane tickets, plane seats, and literally everything. I even negotiate at expensive stores sometimes. They're like, "What is happening?" But then, but then I manage to get amazing discounts. So sometimes when you negotiate in a setting that they don't expect it, that's when you probably get. Sometimes I have seen,
Sure.
but that's when I get the best outcome because they're not expecting it. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess you also enjoy the art of negotiating when
miss
you do
it.
it so much. That's I think people should learn more that like if you do it, approach it the right way, it's an enjoyable process and
Yeah,
both sides do. Yeah.
absolutely.
But also, yeah, I think you guys raised up a lot of good points, and I think one other difference with Japan or Asia is that contracts are not that important and relationships are so much more important. So also working at like Mitsubishi as well, some of our counterparts would just not pay like the super late or things like that. And the mindset was very different, where we don't really look at the contracts and what we wrote at the contracts, but it was much more about, oh, how are they feeling and what are they thinking. So the US is a lot more like litigation focused, go to court kind of culture, whereas it's a lot more about soft. And also, employee protection is super strong in Asia as well. So it's at least in Japan, it's very hard to get fired in the first place. And so, yeah, contracts are much less important. It's about like relationships.
That's very interesting. That reminds me of the concept of asking culture and guessing culture. Is that what it is? Ask and
Asker,
guess.
guesser.
Yeah. So the Western culture, America, very ask culture. So you ask for things, or you just can be more direct about it. Whereas in the guessing culture, I think this is much more indicative of Asian cultures, where you need to sort of assume or guess what is happening and try to
communicate indirectly and hint
Yeah.
at things. And there was, I believe, a New York Times article on this. And the example was your best friend wants to stay with you for 6 weeks with you and your partner, and they also have their partner. And an asker would be like, hey, can I stay with you for 6 weeks? And then it's on you to say, sorry, I can only do 2 weeks or something like that. Versus guesser would probably not even ask, or would be like, oh, what are you doing those 6 weeks in spring and things like that. It's so funny because I shared this article with Alex's family, and his oldest sister was like, I cannot imagine asking that or being asked that. The nerve to put you in a position to say no to you, which is so funny because you can just say no, but
Yeah.
no, you're putting me in a position to say no. It's fascinating.
That's great. Yeah, definitely.
So, what did negotiations look like in Asia outside of job offers? I'm curious if I could be a fly on the wall.
I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the concept nemawashi in Japan. This is the way that people in Japan negotiate. But nemawashi is a very well-known concept where if you're going to negotiate something, you don't do it at the meeting. You do it before the meeting, and you go to every single person who are the stakeholders in that meeting and talk to them individually and get their consent first. And then you go to the meeting, and the meeting is just a place to just say, we agree and finish
I love
it.
that.
Wow.
Nemawashi. And those people you've talked to, do they know that you are talking to everyone else as well? It's already understood that you're sort of preparing everyone?
Yeah, it's a given. Everybody expects you to do that. So if you haven't done that, you're not going to be able to get the consent typically. Yeah.
And what does it mean as a word, nemawashi, verbatim?
Nemawashi means to spread the roots. So you're kind of spreading your idea to different stakeholders.
Wow, love that.
That's really cool. I mean, it makes so much sense. You want to back
Alignment.
channel and get pre-alignments so that the actual negotiation goes very smoothly versus just coming in guns blazing
Yeah.
like an American.
I call that.
No.
Too real right now with the news, but
Gosh.
I mean, it's always real in the US.
America.
But that's so fascinating because we actually tell people not to negotiate in live conversations either, not in person, not over the phone, over Zoom. You want to negotiate outside. And the reason we say that is because I prefer email negotiations for myself and for my clients because it allows you to craft the narrative and the communication and make sure you're emphasizing the goodwill and the excitement in a way that it's more palatable, as opposed to if you do it live. Now, let's say you're negotiating with a recruiter, the recruiter pings the CEO on Slack, Kinko wants more money, as opposed to you craft a very beautiful email and then they can forward it and, oh, looks like Kinko wants more money, but here's why he's a great fit and all that and how excited he is about the role. So nemawashi, I think I'm going to start telling people, hey, so we have this strategy called nemawashi. We got it in Japan.
Yeah, it's also, downsides that it takes time. And so decision making takes more time, and you have to really understand who the stakeholders are and build relationships. But yeah, it's a very common way. So definitely a fun, different way of approaching. But yeah, it sounds like it's quite similar what you guys are teaching. So
That's super cool. And then what else do you think about the negotiations? For example, you're welcome to give your own examples, but I'm thinking as you were deciding the price for that project that I'm so fascinated you went at 50% of normal rate. Were you, because we tell our clients to step one in any negotiation is you figure out what your priorities are and rank them in order of from most important to least important and mark your non-negotiables, like your walk away points. And so to me, it sounds like what happened with you, and I'm curious what that actually looked like, but to me, it sounds like what you did is, hey, priority number one is land this client. Okay, land them, which means the price is not a non-negotiable. We're willing to be flexible on that, but lending them is non-negotiable. Like, we definitely want them. And so then we go all in on how to lend them. We'll lower the price so that we get the deal. What did that process look like for you?
That's our priority was very clear that we just wanted a project. So that was so that's why we, priced ourselves a little too low. It's also, so it was more about how do we choose the priorities, and because we were just starting out, that was our high priority, but also our choice to stay bootstrapped. We were offered like venture capital funding, but we chose not to take it because we wanted to decide things on our pace and our priorities. So that, I think, also was very helpful in deciding that, okay, we don't need to generate that revenue right away and take the project first. So yeah, just focusing on building the experience.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, because why did we choose that priority was because the client was one of the largest companies, like Fortune 500s, and I think, that gives us a lot more leveraging power for the next negotiation, because once you already have a big client, that's a huge negotiation tactic where it's like everybody wants to jump in on the train if you're already working with the top, and it's much easier to go down from there rather than starting with a less well-known company and then trying to build yourself up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pricing is so tricky for everyone. And if you look at it from the outside, we had to make a tough call like you did as well. So, with our first client, one of our very first clients, we were debating between a flat fee and a success fee. Right now, we have both. We have a flat fee and a success fee for the same sort of engagement. But back then, we were trying to figure that out. And we went with a flat fee just so the client had the peace of mind. But that happened to be one of our best performing deals where we helped that client increase their total comp by $550,000 from initial offer to final offer. So we helped them make $500,000 more, over $500,000 more.
Wow.
But if we had taken a success fee, that would have been a very healthy take home amount. But similar to you, we had just started our business. We're like, we want to be able to say we've worked with this type of client and they will refer people. And the client actually offered to do a full-on case study on us, which was wonderful. But I think it is delicate and it's more far-sighted to incorporate into the formula other things that matter to you rather than just the price.
Right. That's super interesting. And so typically recently how do you advise between flat fee and success fee? I guess it depends on the contract itself, but
yeah, it depends on the contract, but we started with success fee only. Actually, we wanted to prove ourselves, and that went really well. However, we started getting more and more demand. And we also noticed that sometimes clients would work with us for a long time and then they're like, you know what, I just don't need a new job right now. And so we've worked with you for weeks and weeks, if not months, put in a lot of hours and effort, and they might decide, I don't need a new job right now. I'm just going to apply in a year or two. And so we're like, we need to get paid at least for some of our work. So that's how we incorporated the flat fee. We could afford to get fewer clients. It's a resentment fee. I started getting resentful. I'm like, I worked with this client for months. And so we have some flat fee to cover like that upfront cost. And then we have a success fee as well so that we win together. The more you win, the more we win, not the other way around.
And the flat fee also has them have skin in the game. So they have paid meaningful amounts. And so they're actually more committed to working with us closely and getting the best value. I think you said this earlier.
Yeah, you said that earlier.
For the clients that ended up paying a lot of money, they're like, well, we paid a lot of money for this. Let's make sure that we fully see this through.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely good to have some of the flat fee. And just out of curiosity, and then you revisit
You're interviewing us now. Go ahead.
It's rare opportunity to talk with such experienced consultants about. When do you review the contract that you already made? Like, do you also suggest clients to look at the job offers again and ask for a new a salary or new pricing at a certain point after they perform a little bit?
Do you mean like when do we revise our prices or
Yeah. Like, do you ever suggest clients to look back at the old contract and like change up the price or ask for like a new offer after you've been working for some time? So like look back at the original offer and be like, hey, I performed this well, so can you like up the salary or something like that?
Job offers are different from business deals. With job offers, it's usually a matter of a couple months engagement, sometimes a couple weeks or even a couple of days. So we don't change our pricing halfway through. We have a one-page contract and we made sure to keep it one page. So the font is very small and all that, like a college paper. But in a matter of a couple of months, we do not change the pricing. We obviously stick to what we agreed to. But a business deal is more of a long-term engagement, and I can see how maybe halfway through the year you are very busy and someone else is paying you a lot more, which is actually, I was going to bring this point up with you because I think that what needs to go hand in hand, there's so much beautiful science and psychology that goes into this, but when you offer lower prices, I think the engagement needs to be shorter so that you can revisit the engagement and then change the pricing later on. So I'm curious if you pair those up or have thought about that.
Yeah, that's a delicate balance because we always want to do more retainer projects. So if we want to keep it as long as possible. So maybe a mixture of like commission or success fee and the flat rate makes sense. But yeah, always good to revisit. I mean,
there are so many cool studies on this, on when you can revisit things. So for example, the new year is a great point, almost like a fake, because what's a new year? It's just another month or day, but it's a good point to revisit. So you may have noticed like menu prices change around that time. Therapists change their pricing. Oh, it's a new year. Why does it matter, right? It's an arbitrary date. And obviously an end of a project, that's when you can renew and renegotiate. There's a lot.
Then this concept goes into habit forming as well, right? So if you're trying to build a habit, then you start at the beginning of the week. There's just this mental marker that, okay, this is where I can start fresh, right? Beginning of the week or beginning of the month.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I mean, otherwise, it's hard to justify why you want to review something if it's not an end of a project, especially if you want to change the terms. They'll be like, why do you want to? Yeah, slight tangent in Japan is, it's been a deflationary industry for the past 3 decades. And so even like convenience stores, if they raise the price by several cents, they do a public apology saying we have to raise the price for this item because it's just not customary to change prices. So
yeah. This brings us back to a study I talk about a lot. This was by a Harvard professor, I want to say back in the 70s. And she realized that when people say because, when they're asking for something, can I do this because XYZ, people are much more likely, like significantly more likely to do you that favor, even if the actual reason makes no sense. I think it was at a post office and people were trying to cut in line. And if you say, can I cut you in line because I'm eating an apple, which has no reason why you would want to cut in line, people go from 60% likely to let you cut in line to 90% chance of letting you cut in line. And the new year can act as that because where you're like, oh, we're updating our prices because it's the new year. But again, to me, the new year is very arbitrary. There's no reason why it should be a time when people change their prices. But I think it tags onto that study of the because.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Awesome.
Well, Kenko, we covered so many different things in this conversation. We are so glad to have had you on our podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
As you face more high stakes negotiations, we would love to have you for a part 2, and we want to hear all the behind the scenes of it.
Definitely.
Kenko, if anyone wants to learn more about you, where could they find you? Do you have a website or hit you up on LinkedIn? And we'll include all the notes in the show notes as well, any links.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, my LinkedIn is Kenko Ueyama and my website it's tsubasa-ai.com.
What does Tsubasa?
Oh, Tsubasa means wings in Japan. Yeah.
Okay, because you work with aerospace.
Originally, yes. Yeah, and I do a bunch of free consultations just to talk about pain points. So if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to chat as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to add those in the show notes. And we'll see you later tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to always think about negotiations, and everybody faces it. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time.
Cool.
you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenko.
All right, have a good one.
All right.